Dogs are extraordinary animals. You know why? It's because they're capable of things that genuinely stretch what we think is possible. For example, in 2003, a woman in London noticed that her dog kept fixating on a small, ordinary-looking mole on her leg. Not occasionally, obsessively. Day after day, the dog returned to it, sniffing with an intensity that felt different, that was persistent and purposeful. She brought her dog to a vet, assuming something was wrong with the dog. The vet didn't examine the dog. Instead, he advised the woman to see a dermatologist, and they found out the mole was a malignant melanoma, as known as skin cancer. Her dog had detected it, before any doctor or any diagnostic tool, before any examination of any kind. But how could it manage to do such an impressive thing? This isn't just a story. It's a documented clinical case in the medical literature. And ever since, researchers are focused on just a question. If dogs can actually smell disease, how does that work? And just how far does that ability go? Welcome to Beyond the Paws. Today we are going to talk about the ability of your dog's sense of smell that might permanently change how you see them, not just as a companion, but as something closer to a living diagnostic instrument. If this sounds like something worth understanding, stay with us and enjoy. A dog's sense of smell doesn't just outperform a human's, it operates on a completely different scale. The average part of a dog's brain dedicated to processing a scent is, relative to overall brain size, roughly 50 times larger than the equivalent region in humans. And while humans have around 6 million scent receptors, dogs have approximately 300 million. That's not a marginal difference. It's a different category of biological hardware entirely. It's what has made dogs key role partners in detecting explosives, narcotics, and missing persons for decades. But over the last 20 years, researchers have been pushing that boundary further. Can that same nose detect diseases? The answer is more compelling than most people expect. Every disease affects the body's chemistry. Some of them affect more than others, but none of them can affect without a trace. Cancer is one of the most common of those diseases, and as cancer cells divide, they produce what researchers call volatile organic compounds. These molecules make their way into breath, urine, sweat, and blood. The human nose can't detect them, but a dog's nose can. In a 2006 study led by McCulloch and colleagues, dogs were trained to identify patients with early and late-stage lung and breast cancer using breath samples alone. What do you think about their accuracy? 88% for lung cancer, 97% for breast cancer. These results were literally a shock for scientists. In 2011, a study in Japan took this further. A single trained dog detected colon cancer from breath and fluid samples with 98% accuracy. Also, it performed equally well on early-stage tumors, where detection is hardest and matters most. At the University of Pennsylvania's School of Veterinary Medicine, dogs were able to identify ovarian cancer from tumor tissue and blood samples. Researchers are now working to develop an electronic nose capable of imitating what those dogs were doing. And in 2024, a study conducted in collaboration between the University of Bristol and the Royal Veterinary College found that dogs detected bladder cancer in provided samples with sensitivity approaching 90%. What made this study particularly striking was that the samples being tested belonged to other dogs, not humans. In 2019, a story circulated through the scientific and medical community that was difficult to believe at first. Joy Milne, a nurse, noticed something was different about her husband long before he received a Parkinson's diagnosis. What she noticed was just a faintly sweet, subtly unfamiliar smell of her husband. That odor, researchers later confirmed, came from sebum, a volatile organic compound secreted through the skin of Parkinson's patients. Her husband's diagnosis came years after she first detected it. If a human nose could catch that signal, could a dog's? Even today, there is currently no absolute definitive biochemical test for Parkinson's disease. It might have been started up to 20 years before any recognizable symptoms appear. If dogs can access that window, early intervention, that the kind that could genuinely alter the course of the disease, becomes a real possibility. To find out the answer, a large-scale experiment was conducted in 2022 across 4 medical centers in China. 3 dogs were trained and tested to detect Parkinson's disease. When 2 or more dogs confirmed positive results on the same sample, their sensitivity reached up to 91%. The research team described the outcome as genuinely surprising. Then in 2025, a study published through a collaboration between the University of Bristol and medical detection dogs showed that 2 trained dogs could detect Parkinson's from human skin samples with 80% sensitivity. The best part is, they could do so even in patients who carried other health conditions alongside it. That distinction matters enormously for real-world clinical application. Dogs are delivering strong results for cancer and Parkinson's. But what about other conditions? The list goes on. A 2019 study published in The Lancet Infectious Diseases found that trained dogs could identify children carrying the malaria parasite from the scent of socks worn overnight with 70% accuracy. The practical implication is real. Dogs could be deployed at airports and border crossings to help prevent the spread of the disease before it crosses into new regions. In 2024, psychological stress entered the picture. A study by Kiroja and colleagues found that dogs could identify the PTSD disorder from breath samples taken from individuals during traumatic memory recall. They detect the stress response with 81% accuracy. But there's more. Diabetic alert dogs can smell changes in human breath during insulin descent and warn their owners before a hypoglycemic crisis sets in. Some dogs appear to detect an oncoming migraine in their owner hours before the symptoms begin, shifting their behavior in response. All of these examples share one common point. Each event in the human body leaves a chemical trace, and dogs can follow that trace at a level of sensitivity that our most advanced medical technology has not yet matched. How reliable is this ability really? Where does the scientific community actually stand? The findings we've discussed are real, and they come from controlled experiments with documented methodology. But science remains cautious for legitimate reasons. Critics point to inconsistencies in experimental design, limited sample sizes of experiments, and results that haven't always held up under replication attempts. What we do have is strong, consistent evidence that dogs can detect the scent of disease. But we have to answer, how do you turn that ability into a standardized clinical tool? The real goal for most researchers isn't to put dogs in hospitals as doctors. It's to understand the mechanism well enough to build systems that can replicate it. Dogs are the essential key that unlocks that research, but they're not the final destination. Did you notice something? That woman in London in 2003, and the dog turned out to be the starting point for a row of research that's still expanding today. That dog was just responding to a scent, and in doing so, it made visible something that medicine hadn't yet learned to see. A dog's capacity for scent detection places them in a category of their own when it comes to early disease recognition, makes the dogs so significant. And that capacity is now the foundation on which researchers and medical institutions are actively building. So here's a question. What if that dog were yours? Has your dog ever seemed to react to something about you? A change in your scent? A shift in your body? When you start asking those questions, the answers that come up might surprise you. If you know someone whose dog has shown this kind of unusual attentiveness, share this video with them. It might give them a different way of thinking about what they've been seeing. And if you've experienced something like this yourself, share it in the comments. Your observation might be exactly what another dog owner needs to hear. Thank you for watching us. We'll be searching for answers beyond the paws.